Did it show a message that said the recording in process to you guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. You are all set. Okay. So it's 10 a.m. So we're going to start right on the dot. Thank you everyone for coming and for showing interest in careers and subjects within psychology. I just want to give a brief introduction on who I am, who the e-board is for the 2022 to 2024 chapter of Psychi, what Psychi is, and then we'll get into this meeting. I'm Ms. Stephanie Abrego. I'm the president of the 2022 to 2024 chapter of Psychi. I'll go ahead and pass it to Erica and then Maria so they can introduce themselves.
Okay, thank you for the intro, Stephanie. My name is Erica Pino, and I am the vice president of Psychi. Maria?
Hi, I'm Maria. I'm the social media chair of Psychi.
And so thank you so much for joining us. If you weren't able to come to last semester's Getting to Know Psychi and what we really are about, I'll just give a little spiel now so that you all are aware in case you guys are interested in joining Psychi. Psychi really is just an honor society in psychology that really emphasizes providing an environment and a space for undergraduates to get together and learn about different things within psychology and the field of psychology, whether it's interviews, how to prepare for interviews, how to land a job as with your bachelor's, different careers in psychology, graduate school applications, scholarships, research assistant, openings, anything that has to do with psychology. We hold these meetings so that we can better advocate and really inform undergraduates about the opportunities that they have within psychology. So just in case you weren't aware, that is what Psychi is. Basically like a psychology club. So let's get into today's meeting. So as an introduction, I'm sure a lot of you know that psychology is a very dynamic field with so many subfields. You know, it can range from clinical to IO to developmental. It really is a broad field. And that's why we're hosting this meeting in terms of really getting to know your options. You can go from cognitive and developmental psychologist, which goes into thought processes, or you can go into industrial organizational, which is more workforce implemented. There's so many things that you can do with psychology, whether it's attaining your master's or, you know, going to your doctorate, or even just sticking with your master's. There's still some opportunities to do there as well. So I just a brief introduction about what we're doing here today. So let's get into industrial organizational psychology first, and then we'll go into the other subfields. So industrial organizational psychology is psychology within the workforce, right? So when you think of psychology, a lot of people tend to think of therapy and tend to think of, you know, that clinical setting, and that's absolutely a part of psychology, but it's not everything. Industrial organizational psychology really applies data-driven science and research into big organizations and industry sectors, right? So what you'd basically be doing is you would be helping a business, let's say it's kind of like consulting, but with science and psychology background. If the business or organization has an issue, you would use science in order to try and fix and address that issue within the organization. So as an industrial organizational psychologist, I would use the science that I learned from psychology, collect data, do research on how to really address that issue, and use hard-driven data in order to create a protocol to then address the organization's issue. That's what industrial organizational psychology is. Now let's talk about what you really need in order to be an IO psychologist. So in order to be an industrial organizational psychologist, technically all you need is your master's. That's the only thing that you need. But I know that some people shy away from just doing their master's because it is expensive, right? Getting your master's for 2 years, it's not funded. Versus if you get your PhD, you have a lot more years within your education, but it is fully funded and you're more equipped. by getting not only the research side, but more so the applied side. So if you were to get your master's in industrial organizational psychology, they're not really emphasizing research. They may touch upon it, but it's not their emphasis. It's really more of an applied route versus PhD, you're getting both the applied and the research-driven aspect of it. Now, in terms of salary, IO psychologist is the highest paying field within psychology. It really depends on the business that you're in and the industry that you're in, but these are some ballpark numbers just to give you guys an emphasis. You can start at 96,000 a year, again, depending on the organization, big emphasis there. You could also start at 60,000 for some industries, but you can increase your salary up to like 190 a year. Sometimes even higher depending on your experience, the organization, how many years you've been there. So these are some things to keep in mind. Where can you work? So like I said, industrial organizational psychologists usually work in either Big 10 organizations, small organizations, businesses, industries, schools. You can either stick the academia route, you can even become a professor and teach IO courses, or you can work in labor unions. Some work at national government agencies, universities, HR departments, some even work in schools. It's really broad. So if you do get into industrial organizational psychology, into a master's or PhD program, there really is a lot of opportunity there for you if this is something that you choose to pick and see for your future. Alrighty, so what can I do with a bachelor's in psychology? Sometimes there's this misconception that there isn't a lot that we can do with just our bachelor's in psychology. And I just want to say that's completely wrong. There is things that you can do. It's just not the highest paying opportunities out there, right? Usually you hear you need to go for grad school, and in a sense, it's true if you want a higher paying position within psychology, but to say that there's no field that you can get into with the bachelor's in psych, absolutely wrong. You can be a lab coordinator, and I would recommend being a lab coordinator if you're interested in grad school. Let's say after you get your bachelor's, you're thinking about going into grad school, but you're not there yet. You want to still build your resume and your research skills. Usually people who want to go into grad school after their bachelor's go into a lab coordinator position, get in a lab, build their research skills. You get paid to do it, and it bulks up your resume. Another thing that undergraduates do if they want to go into graduate school, but they're not necessarily ready, is a post-bac program. A post-bac program is a program that universities usually hold. Every university has them. It just depends on the specific program. So I know that Rutgers, I think, has a post-bac program in psychology where you're basically in a lab, you're working with an advisor and a PI and the lab members, and you're carrying out your own research within that lab, helping the advisor. So it's basically what you would be doing in graduate school, but now you're doing it as a post-bac, again, just to build up your CV, build up your resume, and you get paid for it. It's literally like a job. And then after that, if you feel, more confident in your application, you then submit to grad school, and it makes you more of a competitive applicant. Another thing that you can do with your bachelor's are all of the following. You can do school, faculty, caseworker, market research analyst, human resources training or development specialist, technical writer, and computer programmer. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Erica now. I just want to say I will be excusing myself in a bit, but then I'll be coming back in case you all have any questions for me.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie, for that. Okay, so moving on, another really huge topic in psychology is obviously clinical psychology. This is what most people think of when they hear of psychology because they think of therapy and counseling, but essentially clinical psych is just a vital branch of psychology that concentrates on diagnosing, treating, and preventing mental, emotional behavior disorders. It plays a crucial role in enhancing the well-being and quality of life of individuals. So typically, the journey to becoming a clinical psychologist would require a PhD or a PsyD in clinical psychology. However, most people feel like they can practice therapy, which most people do want to do, with simply a master's in social work or an LPC. The difference between an LPC slash Master of Social Work as opposed to a PhD or PsyD in psychology is that the PhD or PsyD is going to open more opportunities for research, to work as professors, to open your own practice, etc. We can go to the next one, please, Maria. Thank you. Okay, so moving on, another big branch in psychology is developmental psychology. Developmental psychology essentially focuses on the study of how people grow and change over the course of their lives. These type of psychologists usually strive to understand and explain how people develop intellectually, emotionally, socially, morally, from babies through their old age. Some careers in developmental psychology can vary. However, some of the most common ones are as a researcher, that would be with a PhD or PsyD, most likely to work in a research institute or as a professor. However, most people feel that they can also work in the developmental sector of psychology by being a BCBA as an ABA therapy. There's jobs in speech pathology, occupational therapy, speech development specialists, child development specialists, school psychologists, and there's plenty more that you can focus on developmental psychology in. It's a very wide field. Okay, moving on, just like we had mentioned in developmental psychology slide prior, a big topic in psychology is school psychology. Essentially, they focus on applying psychology principles to support children and adolescents in educational settings. This is usually done by assessments, counseling, and testing, intervention strategies as well. So school psychologists, they focus on really talking to the kids, ensuring that they have good educational background, as well as doing IQ tests, assessing their behaviors, any type of psychological or academic disorders, etc. Usually all that's necessary for us to become a school psychologist is a master's in education or a master's of science in school psychology. However, there are doctoral degrees in school psychology if interested. Okay, moving forward, abnormal psychology is a branch of psychology that focuses on the study of treatment and mental emotional disorders. Essentially, it aims to understand, describe, predict, and treat behaviors that are considered abnormal and atypical. This usually involves examining patients of unusual behaviors, emotions, thoughts that may manifest as mental disorders. This can be anything from anxiety disorders to depressive disorders to super abnormal topics like pedophilia. It's very broad, and most of the time, people who can diagnose and assess this are people with PhDs or PsyDs. However, you can also treat people with these type of disorders, of course, with a master's of social work or an LPC as well.
Okay, so moving on to community psychology. So this is actually one of the psychology classes here on campus, and I definitely recommend taking it if what I'm telling you about seems interesting to you. But basically, community psychologists, they look for ways to prevent problems rather than treating them when they arise. They emphasize empowerment, social justice, prevention, and they collaborate on addressing social issues and improving the quality of life for individuals and communities. So they can be the ones who design and implement interventions that address systematic issues and promote positive change. Regarding the careers in community psychology, that can include in the community where there'll be a community organizer who mobilize individuals, address community needs, and advocate for social change. They can work in nonprofit organizations where they'll contribute to community development, advocacy, and social services. They can also work in government agencies as public health. They can work in government agencies and address public health disparities and promote community well-being. I like and Also in education. So regarding education, just to give an example, so let's say you're a community psychologist in a school setting. So they would collaborate with schools to implement an, for instance, an anti-bullying program. And they'd partner with the school staff, the parents, the students to basically create an intervention to foster positive school climate and promote empathy and implement restorative justice practices to address the bullying in that school. So the degree requirements, of course, a bachelor's degree in psychology, community psychology, or a related field. And most of them do go on to get their master's degree in community psychology. And they'd usually only go on to a doctoral degree, like a PhD or a PsyD, if they're interested in careers in research or academia. And licensure depends on where you're located. Oh, okay, moving on to neuropsychologists. So basically a neuropsychologist, they study the impact of brain injuries, diseases, abnormalities on mental function and behavior. So it's really interesting because it's combining psychology and neuroscience together. They explore various cognitive functions like memory, attention, language, problem solving, and they use neuroimaging techniques such as fMRI, CT, EEG to examine the brain structure and activity, but they also use behavioral assessments in research as well. And usually the degree requirements, like I said before, are a bachelor's degree in psychology, neuroscience, bio, pre-med, or any related field. Then they can go on to get their master's degree in neuropsychology and doctoral. And of course, internships and supervised work experience is always a good way to build your resume if you are looking to get your master's degree or doctoral degree. And research experience as well is always a good idea. So one very known case in psychology that in neuropsychology is, I'm sure you've heard about this if you've taken a psychology or neuroscience class, the patient HM who went through brain surgery to remove part of his medial temporal lobe. And that was just to get rid of his epilepsy, but he ended up getting antegrade amnesia and he couldn't form new memories. So that basically told researchers that the hippocampus is essential for memory formation. So just a real life example of neuropsychologists in the field. Um, and next, another really interesting field, neuromarketing. This one combines neuroscience, psychology, and marketing to influence consumer behavior. So they again use various neuroscientific techniques to measure and analyze brain activity, emotions, and cognitive responses to marketing experience. So they could use the fMRI scan to determine which brain areas are activated in specific marketing stimuli. They can also use behavioral methods by measuring your facial expressions when you see a certain ad. The career paths include consulting actually, so they can offer their expertise in a business so they can optimize their marketing strategy. They can work in advertising to see how the brain processes ads to help create more effective and memorable advertising campaigns. And a real life example would be like if they were to study the effectiveness of Super Bowl advertisements and emotional engagement. So I think this was actually a study done, but they found that with EEG and facial expression analysis that emotional ads were more memorable to people than ads that weren't as emotional, if that makes any sense. And the degree requirements include a bachelor's degree in marketing, psychology, neuroscience, or business, They can also move on to an advanced degree like a master's in consumer behavior or neuromarketing, and of course, a PhD in neuromarketing if interested in research or academic positions. And of course, internships in marketing and research positions or research positions are always a good idea. And I've also linked this organization that I found online where you can learn more about the field of neuromarketing if you're interested and connect with professionals. So that's actually all for us. Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah. Thank you so much for those, Maria. If you guys have any questions, feel more than free to leave it in the chat or to just unmute yourself, and Maria and I will be more than happy to answer any questions you might have about any of these topics, about psychi in general.
I have a question, but it's kind of related, but you guys didn't talk about it. I was wondering if you guys know more about, because Rutgers at the School of Health Professions, they offer a master's program, the rehab counseling, clinical mental health counseling. I was wondering if you guys know a little bit more about that.
Okay, personally, I don't know much about that program, but I have heard people who've wanted to go into it. I don't have much information on it now, but if you'd like to leave your email in the chat, I can find out some more information for you and get back to you if you'd like.
Are there any specific questions that you have about the program or just like in general?
Well, to be honest, I got into the program because so I'm more curious, like on that. Thank you. Like in the work field related, like what can I do with this master's? Because
Okay.
like they kind of went over it, but it was like very brief during interviews. So like if you guys could get more information, that'd be awesome if you know people.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
definitely.
I mean,
But
that's
just
my
in
question.
case we don't, like, just in case we don't find someone, I would definitely recommend, I don't know if there's an option for this on LinkedIn, but like if you can, is there an option to look up like the degrees that people have? Because then like you can message people directly and see, hi, I'm looking into this field. I'd love to connect. Like, do you know what I can do with this degree? Like, do you want
Okay.
to talk? Stuff like
Okay.
that. Some people do that.
Okay, I'm gonna try to look into it as well over there. But thank
I
you.
copied your email down, so I will message you with some updates if I find anything, okay?
Perfect. And is it too late to join like the that program you guys have? Even if I'm a senior, I'm graduating in May. It's like literally done practically.
Well, you're more than welcome to attend all of our meetings. It's kind of like the unofficial psychology club. Everything that we've been hosting has been open to all students, but in regards to like the actual organization, like the Honor Society, I believe that the deadline closes tomorrow, right, Maria? On March 8th, if I'm not mistaken.
No, the deadline actually closed March 1st.
Was it
But
March 1st? Okay.
yeah, you can try emailing Dr. Zambrano if you'd like. You are a psychology major, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. But does it
Yeah.
matter even though I'm graduating like
No,
less than
it doesn't matter if you're already graduating, it's more the deadline. I would definitely reach out to Dr. Zambrano or
Yeah,
Dr. about it.
okay, perfect. I'll email it.
but ASAP.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And we have a question in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Let's see.
Is it possible to get a PsyD without a master, specifically looking to go into clinical psychology?
Okay, I can answer that. So it's totally possible to get a PsyD without a master's. Most times in PhD or PsyD programs, a lot of PhDs or PsyDs will tell you like you're getting your doctorate and they kind of throw you like a master's along the way. So you're gonna get your master's as you're in the program once you finish like all your credits and coursework. And then I think the later part of your academic career, like getting your doctorate, whether it's a PhD or PsyD, is more going to be like writing a dissertation or research based. So you don't need a master's degree to pursue either of those. It definitely helps in the application process, but plenty of people do get in without having a master's already. You don't need the master's before you apply for a PhD or PsyD.
But a PsyD would just be practicing, and PhD would be practicing and research.
Well, yes and no, I think. You still need to write a dissertation for a PsyD. They still incorporate a little bit of research into it. It's just not as research heavy as a PhD, but you need to do research on either of them. One of them is just going to be like highly concentrated on research, like a PhD, and a PsyD is just going to be like mostly applied in clinical practice. And a small chunk, like perhaps 1 year of your studies will be like research focused.
Okay, we have another question. I'm a junior looking for internships. Do you know where I would be able to find some? Are there any on campus? So if you're just applying, thinking about applying to summer internships now, you might be a little late, just because the deadlines were probably last month. But I would definitely look into some research labs here if you haven't joined a lab yet, because that's also a good experience along with internships.
Yeah.
Okay, and
What are some internships if I wanted to be a clinical therapist? So, unfortunately, it's a little bit hard sometimes to find like specific internships in clinical psychology. However, there are other ways you can get some experience working clinically that I think will boost your graduate school application. Research is always going to be great. Some of the labs at Rutgers-Newark do offer internships in psychology, like under the labs. For example, the Child Study Center. We do have internships in psychology available, but that's usually for RAs who have already worked. So if you're not a first year like research assistant, or if you're not a last year RA, like as in a senior, I would suggest getting into a lab, working as an RA, and then trying to be a part of an internship like the following summer. But again, it might be a little bit too late for this summer. Otherwise, some other good ways to get some like clinical experience besides internships might be working in like an ABA therapy place. I'm sure that a lot of you might have seen those before. They're urgently hiring everywhere, like with kids with autism and behavior disorders. That's a really good clinical experience. You can also volunteer in like hospitals or like on text lines, like crisis text lines. Other than that, internships might be a little bit hard to come by in psychology. Maria, do you have anything to add to that? Maybe.
well, if it's just about getting experience in psychology, I feel like another good way, if you don't have any options like for the summer, you don't want to take any summer courses in Rutgers, and you don't have an internship or a lab, I would say like maybe looking up online certificates for psychology. That's a really good way to get experience and to explore other fields of psychology as well. You might have to pay for a few certificates, but a lot are free. Yeah.
Great. Okay. What's next? Is it possible to work when going for SID? I know those programs can be very extensive. I'm not sure if I should go for a master's and then work a little and then go for a doctorate degree. What are your thoughts on that? So I think that everyone's path is different and everyone's like financial situation is different. Most PsyD and PhD programs don't want you to work as you're pursuing them. It is like a very time-consuming thing to pursue your doctorate. I think during a graduate program and a like a master's set term, I think it is sustainable to work. A lot of people who do get their masters are already working professionals, so I don't think that would be an issue with the master's. So if that's more sustainable for you to work and pursue your master's, then that might be a great option for you. However, as it when you pursue a PhD or PsyD, you might need to invest a little bit more time in your academics, and I'm not sure how much you could potentially work during that. I know for PhDs, a lot of programs will provide you a stipend to live on. So not only do they help you like cover the cost of tuition, but they also will provide you like an opportunity to work as like a TA, and they'll pay you like a certain amount per year. Usually it's not great, but it's like potentially livable. So you're still kind of making money as you're getting your PhD, but that's not typically available for PsyDs. I hope that answered your question.
A
Um,
lot of people when they're applying, like personally, I'm going to be applying to master's programs and post-bachelor's programs, just in case, like just to have something to fall back on, if you don't get into the program that you want. And it's always a good idea to apply to as many as you can. Of course, like these applications are madly expensive. So of course, stick within your budget and to what's realistic as well.
Yes.
And okay, so who would I have to contact to join a lab? So that depends if it's a psychology lab or a neuroscience lab. I don't know if anyone here is actually interested in neuroscience, but psychology labs, if you go on the psychology Rutgers website, there should be a list of the labs and their applications as well, or you can contact the professor directly, but they do already have applications set for it. And we can actually share that on our group me later, but the website to apply to different labs.
We can also provide a PowerPoint that we did in the fall semester where we talked about it, and we have the links to like most of the labs, the psychology labs, at least at Rutgers. So after we get off this meeting, I'll share that PowerPoint so you guys can have all the website links to look at the labs as well.
And Dr. Z actually shared yesterday, I think, an amazing opportunity for joining a lab for I think a year. I think it's 2 summers and 1 academic year, and you'd get a stipend with it as well. So if anyone is in Psych High and got that email, I would definitely check it out if you haven't joined a lab yet.
Okay, I think that's it. Anyone else have any more questions? Oh, no problem, Taylor. Thank you for
Um,
joining us today.
I have a question. Do you know anything about scholarships? Like where to apply for scholarships for grad school?
Yes, look at NSF website. Look at the NSF website. If it's for grad school, they offer a lot of fellowships. Um, NSF, who else? There's a lot of them. If you look at certain conferences like SPF, like what field of psych are you looking into?
Well, it's a master's program, the rehab clinical and counseling, mental
Gotcha.
health.
So it depends, right? I know that if you go different conferences, like social psychological conference, IO conferences, developmental psychologist conferences, they have certain pots of money that they use to like fund grad students to go to these places, or sometimes they even just fund you because you're a part of the community. Usually if you apply, you get in, they give the money to the university and then the university gives it to you. So I would look at NSF, grants and fellowships, and conferences.
Okay, so NSF fellowships and the conferences.
Right.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, does becoming an inducted member in Psych High help for graduate applications? What are the benefits with the membership?
I can take that one. Yes, big yes, 1000% yes. Psychi is an organization that is known domestically. And when I say domestically, that means across the United States. There is a chapter, it's an honor society in psychology, right? That's why we're not a distinguished club, we're an honor society, which means each university, most universities, have a chapter of Psychi within their institution. So just like Rutgers has Psychi 2023-2024 chapter, a university in Cali, university in New York, a university in Florida, they all have Psychi chapters. So if you do have a Psychi membership and you are, especially if you're in the e-board or just talking about your experience as a Psychi member in psychology and you're talking to a psychologist, they'll know what Psychi is and it'll just, you know, make you stand out as an applicant even further. So yes, 1000%. It's beneficial. I know it's expensive. You can apply for the scholarship that we give once a semester to get your payment waived. But yes, they know. They know what Psychi is. And it'll help.
And it may look even better if you are a part of the e-board as well. We're gonna have some open e-board positions for next semester, so please keep that in mind if you are a member of Psych High. Or if you get inducted this semester, we will have open eWord positions next semester. Sorry, I had to squeeze that in.
Yeah, no, big emphasis on that. If you have leadership on the e-board, again, makes your application stand out. And we're actually going to be going over graduate applications our next event. I think that's March 25th. So you should definitely stay tuned for that.
And we have one more question. I applied for Psychi membership. When will I know if I got in or not? I think at the end of March, right?
Yeah, you should know by the end of March, beginning of April. We usually do our induction in May.
Yeah. Do you guys have any more questions?
Also, guys, I shared the RA PowerPoint that I was referring to in the group me. Let me know if anyone has any trouble opening it. But there's lots of great information on the different research labs in there.
Well, alrighty. If there's no other questions, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you at our next event. Can you link the group me, please? I think it's on our Instagram.
Let me stop recording and sharing this.